Hey everyone, it's Friday, which means it's time to deploy. We have a special guest on today's show, Paul. Welcome. For those who don't know, Paul's the founder and CEO of Octopus, and we were able to wrangle him, convince him, drag him onto the show to talk to us about a few things. Thanks for taking the time, Paul.
That's okay. Thanks for forcing me into it.
There you go, Jim. How was your week?
Yeah, good week this week. Fun today in a co-working space with all the colleagues from Melbourne. So it's nice to see people in person for a change.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Things are good on the team and all that.
Yeah, team's going great. Getting some stuff out to production. It's good times. Good times. What about you? How's your week?
It's been good. Yeah, we've been really busy. We're prepping for Shipped, which we might as well talk about now. So, for those who don't know, we've got Shipped coming up in 75 days. I know it sounds like it's a long ways away, but we've got a lot of folks who are submitting content. So, just as a reminder, we've got an open Sessionize that you can go ahead and submit content to. And if you go to this link here, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of things you can tell us about your session, but it's really easy. Just tell us the session format, the track, the level, etc., and let us know. What we're looking for are sessions from you talking about anything and everything related to Octopus and CodeFresh. So we're looking at things like developer experience, GitOps, Argo, Kubernetes, software deployments in general, DevOps, whatever it is that you're interested in. If you've been successful utilizing one of our products, for example, we would love to hear that too. So feel free to submit a session. We would love to hear it. But in the meantime, you can go ahead and reserve your seat for Shipped. So there you go. 75 days, November 20th and 21st. Keep it on your calendar. We also have a bunch of other events coming up. So we were just in Sydney. The team was there. We were hosting a Kubernetes Community Days. We were doing our GitOps workshops. So we have these GitOps certification workshops that we're running, which is fantastic. Lots of awesome photos, as you can see. And we'll be including those. We may actually host those elsewhere. We'll see. So there's a little bit of talk of how successful it was. We may actually have to do that elsewhere. We are planning vigorously for GitHub Universe. We're really looking forward to this. October 29th and 30th. We've been working on the designs for the booth. We got lots of really cool stuff there. I can't tell you any of it right now, so just stay tuned to this show. Maybe we'll be able to sneak something out. We got KubeCon coming up in November, and of course Shipped as well. And then finally, just before we start talking a little bit about what Paul here is for, got some webinars coming up. I've got the 101 next week featuring myself. This is a great way to kick the tires with me to see Octopus. If you want to do just basically a very practical hands-on demo, go ahead and register for that. And then we've got a partner webinar being hosted by DevTools. This is on September 19th. Kubernetes deployment strategy shifting from Jenkins to modern CD. So there you go. Anyways, let's get to the star of the show, who is Paul. So Paul, we have you on because we wanted to talk a little bit about a blog post that you recently posted entitled Octopus Milestones for 2024. This is a very awesome post, I think. So I'm incredibly excited to have you here to tell us a little bit about it. So I'll turn the floor over to you because I don't want to speak to this because I think you know more about this than I do. But, you know, Octopus passed 300 employees this year and 100 million in Australian ARR. So what is this all about?
Yeah, we did. I had to dust off the blog to take a moment. I think, the history of like building the company has been, we focus on our customers, we focus on making good software and stuff. And we're always, I guess, very future focused. So taking even like a few seconds to kind of look back and say, oh, we achieved something and to celebrate is actually something we don't do very well, I think, as a company. And recently we hired our 300th Octonaut, which is going back to when the company started, and it was like a nights and weekends hobby project for me for a few years. And then, we slowly turned it into a business and started hiring a couple of people. It's a long way. Like I remember when we got to 30 people and that felt bigger than it was ever supposed to be. So to get to this point, and the cool thing you see in these photos is these are from celebrations we had sort of all around the world. We've got a really geographically distributed team now. This one's from here in the office. This is from our Israeli office that came about as a part of our acquisition of CodeFresh. This is Jim, you're in this photo, I think. This was us in Melbourne, where we happened to be for an executive meeting. And then I think the other photo is from in LA, where we have a bit of a team kind of in California. So all very cool and nice to take a few moments to actually celebrate the progress. And for me, I think a little bit of a chance in this blog, I think, to kind of recap, I think what makes Octopus like a little bit different. Like 300 people it is a lot, but it doesn't sound like a lot for a software company, because I think what we're kind of used to is like a company raises a ton of money, has no revenue, has no real customers, but sort of venture-backed companies, they hire 300 people because that's what it takes to build a company, right? Like they just immediately hire 300 people, it feels like. Whereas, we've kind of built up to this very slowly, very steadily, very organically, and I think very sustainably over a long period of time. And yeah, it's a very cool milestone.
Yeah, in the blog post here, you said the last update I wrote about Octopus was back in 2021. So yeah, it's been a while. And back then we were 179 people. Perhaps it was time to update the snapshot. So I just wanted to ask you, like, do you ever stop and, like, do you and Sonia ever stop and think, like, wow, I can't believe that where we are right now? Like, does it blow your mind as a founder and her as well, thinking, like, look how far we've come?
It does. I think the sort of blessing is that it has happened organically and slowly over a period of time. So even like I kind of hit some moments through the last 12 years where like I wasn't sure I'd be the right CEO to kind of keep it going and keep it growing. And but you learn as you go and learn new skills and hire new capable people and all of these things. And so every month it's a little bit bigger than it used to be, and so the delta is not all that big, right? And it's like the frog being boiled in the pot. You kind of adjust to the temperature as it's going. But then you look back and you think like, yeah, this was supposed to be a company that would employ 3 or 4 people, and we'd have fun writing code. And the cool thing is we employ 300 people and we have fun writing code. We still love building our products. And it's really cool, I think, also to be able to create opportunities for people who love crafting software to come and work together, in one place where we are working on software that our customers like to use. We're not working on creating ads to destroy democracy or, whatever kind of the big tech are kind of working on. Like, we get to work on software that's used by our peers, and that's really special.
That's awesome. And of course, in March, we announced the acquisition of CodeFresh. This was awesome. So we added 52 new Octonauts overnight. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, this was the big way to start this year. So I think like of the milestones, having CodeFresh join us was really cool. This one sort of came about. Raziel and I bumped into each other at a conference, and I think acquisitions, they start as the way most people imagine acquisitions happen is it's like a financially constructed thing, but this kind of really wasn't. This was like, hey, you're working on something cool, we're working on cool stuff. Mm-hmm. We both seem to have a similar kind of vision of where the world is going. Why don't we partner up and work together and make it happen? And then sort of reversed back into like, okay, business-wise, how do we justify that? But it's been really cool. I think the thing we indexed really hard on in the decision-making process here was trying to figure out like, the culture that we build at Octopus is really special. We're a very transparent company. It's a very flat feeling company, right? Anyone can talk to anyone. We leave our titles at the door, all of those things. And we wanted to really make sure that if we were to acquire a company that, they would also fit very much in as Octonauts. That was like the biggest part of our decision-making process, and that's worked out really well. And I think to this point, almost everybody from CodeFresh, when they joined, they're still here and they're enjoying it and having fun.
I was just reflecting on my own experience with Octopus, having joined in the last couple of years, but back when I was a baby developer, around the time you would have been building it on nights and weekends, and I was running a user group, and I had to get people in like to talk about continuous deployment. I had to get people in writing who used Ruby because we didn't have a tool to do it. And then Octopus came along, and so finally in the .NET world we had a tool that could do automated deployment, let alone continuous deployment. And it's interesting, like sort of all these years later, I'm sort of watching the same thing happen of Octopus being at the edge of a movement when we're now together with CodeFresh, like looking to define that space of GitOps, looking to define that space of continuous delivery and all of that. And I just think it's so cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting, like, because a lot has changed, I think, at the fundamental computing layer, right? Like, we've gone from when Octopus started, the world was mostly virtual machines, still a lot of physical kind of servers. Like, that's gone, right? No one's kind of building new apps to run on physical servers, definitely, and even virtual machines are sort of faded away. So Kubernetes has become this new compute platform, and with Kubernetes has come sort of a declarative state approach to dealing with operations, and with that has come GitOps. But GitOps isn't really a great way to do continuous delivery on its own. It doesn't solve the continuous delivery problem. And I think the cool thing is, like, Octopus was always approaching continuous delivery, like Kubernetes continuous delivery, from a from a continuous delivery point of view, right? What are the best practices we've learned over 20 years? CodeFresh also kind of brought a lot of that experience in delivering software, but kind of started more from an Argo and GitOps point of view, and like how do we bridge that back to continuous delivery to make it work in that world. And I think the thing you see in this space is because so much has changed, and because, I mean, today we have infrastructure engineers who have never physically rack mounted a server, right? Like they don't actually know what the infrastructure there looks like. It just kind of exists in the cloud. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the best practices over the last 20 years, the good ideas at least, they're kind of being reinvented, on top of this space. And I think between Octopus and CodeFresh, there's a real chance actually to figure out how to do this well and take the stuff that we've learned, but also make it work, in a modern world. And yeah, we've got so many talented people working on that now. It's really fun.
Let's talk a little bit about pricing, because I know that's come up a few times. I know that we get questions about it from time to time, and I just wanted to point folks, we've never talked about it up on the show here, but I wanted to point folks to this page that you can go to. This is at octopus.com/pricing. And this is where you get an overview of the two options we have for Octopus. So we have Octopus Cloud and we have Octopus Server. Now, Paul, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but can you tell us a little bit about, the decision-making process that goes into it? This is a tough space, don't you think?
Yeah, if you think like software is hard, like pricing is really hard. Pricing is super hard. And it's hard because like it's, like if we were making physical products, you at least have like what's the cost of goods sold, right? Like what's the raw material of the copper and the stuff that we put into the product. You don't have that with software. So the price can be anything from free and open source through to $1 million. And how do you sort of come up with that pricing? So we've made changes to our pricing model over the years, trying to kind of navigate this and figure it out. And at the moment, actually, we have a lot of customers who are going through some pricing changes, and it's a bit difficult because we've made a very big change to the pricing model for Octopus, right? So it's one thing to sort of say, hey, we've got this product and we price it based on, in our case, we used to price based on the targets that you would deploy to. So however many virtual machines you had, in the old days, that's how we priced it. And so what happened is people with a lot of targets, paid more, and people with not many targets paid less, no matter how much they were really using other parts of the product. And we wanted to do that. Like we wanted to have a fairly simple pricing model because we wanted to have a pricing page on the website. I hate companies where they don't tell you the pricing. The pricing is contact sales. Yeah, like you just sort of immediately like, okay, that's not for me. Yeah, I don't even want to talk to sales. Why would you make me do that to get the pricing? And it's not very, and what is you're probably going to get screwed because if they're hiding the pricing, it means they're just going to charge you whatever they think you can pay, and it's going to be different for every company. It doesn't feel very fair. And so we've always wanted to have pricing on the website, and for it to be on the website, it has to be fairly simple. And so we had per target pricing for the longest time. More recently, we had to change it. We had one last go, I think, at making it work. The big change, as we talked about, like we're going from virtual machines to containers. And so what we said was like, well, in the days where we would charge for a virtual machine, we need to now start charging for the Kubernetes cluster underneath. But that cluster can be used by lots of apps. It can be used by not many apps. It could be something that's auto-scaling underneath or not. And so for a lot of customers, that was really confusing. And I think the weird thing was when you sort of input the stuff in, right? How many targets do I have and what should the price be? I don't think many people actually quibbled with what the end number was because they get enormous value from Octopus, right, in the time that it saves and compliance and all of those things. But how we got there and how it would fluctuate with auto-scaling and stuff was a real point of confusion and a problem. And so at the start of mostly at the start of this year, a little bit late last year, we changed the pricing model to what you see here today, which is we're charging for the projects. And what we modeled, we looked at sort of telemetry and stuff that we have. We know that the people who tend to have a lot of projects, effectively a lot of CD pipelines, they tend to use the product a lot more. So if I've got like one or two pipelines, but a whole lot of targets I deploy to, they actually don't tend to use Octopus very frequently. Whereas they might have very few targets and a lot more projects. They're the ones who actually really tend to get the most value out of Octopus. So we announced these changes to the pricing model. What we're sort of going through today, the painful part, I think, is that there's a lot of customers who are actually paying a lot less than they used to, right? So we've got a company who, they used to pay us $400,000 a year. Now they pay us $300,000 a year. And they're very happy about that because of the pricing model change. At the same time, I think more in the sort of small, medium business space, we have a lot of customers who they do have one or two pipelines. So they have multiple pipelines, but not that many targets, not that much infrastructure that they're deploying to. And their pricing has gone up. And you really feel for them because that's a big change to happen. And in an ideal world, what we'd probably do is say like, hey, you've been a loyal customer for a really long time. We're not going to change the pricing. But then you have this sort of unfairness of like, but the pricing is on the website, and so customers who are saving a lot, they're going to kind of switch that pricing immediately. But the customers who don't benefit from the pricing change, they'll kind of not want to have that change. So that then makes it kind of really unsustainable because, again, we're not a hugely venture-backed company. We're not spending a lot of money and potentially not being in business next year. We're running a sustainable, profitable company, like just a bit profitable enough to make sure that we never have to raise money from investors. And that means that, we need to be able to pay your salaries and my salary and all this kind of stuff, right, to keep it running. And so that's the challenge, I think, with the pricing change that we've gone through. And so we do. And the thing I think people struggle with the most, the weird thing about pricing as it relates to like a DevOps product like Octopus is the way people think about pricing, it could be a little bit emotional, right? Because they're sort of anchored to the price they used to pay. Back when it was a nights and weekends hobby project, I used to charge, like, you'd go to the website, I was the only person working on it back then. It would be like £500 or something, and you would buy an Octopus license, and it was unlimited kind of everything. And there's people who still have that as their reference point, right? Like, that's the fair price for Octopus because it's what it was. But it's changed a lot, right? Like, back then, if you emailed support, it was me replying, and I was probably doing other stuff, so it might take me a week to reply. Now we have support reps in 3 different time zones who are super experienced, super knowledgeable, and they'll reply to you within an hour. That's a massive difference in the experience. The functionality's changed a lot, works much more better in large environments, compliance, all that kind of stuff. So the pricing changes as part of that. What we try and do with those customers is, I think, really help them to see what is, because the problem is also, like, for a lot of people who are getting the price change, it's the company that you work for. There's a budget and stuff around it, and budgets are really important. It's how companies plan. It's how we plan, right? We have like a budget every 2 years, and changes to that budget are really painful because it means you have to cancel other projects or initiatives. And so we really want to work with customers to kind of work through that budgeting process. But also then the challenge is, like, your boss's reference point for what Octopus should cost is also anchored to what you used to pay for it. And so you'll sort of have a customer where maybe they used to pay $1,000 a year, now they have to pay $5,000 a year because of this pricing model change. And we want to work with them to kind of bridge that and help it kind of work within budget. But then if you really ask, like, how valuable is this product? How much time does it save, and so on? And they really think about it. It's like, actually, we get enormous value out of it, even at the new pricing. And if it doesn't, like, that's on us. We should be justifying to you why you're getting this value. We should be showing you the functionality that you're not using. We should be really helping you to get value out of it. We should be helping you, really live up to continuous delivery. And so that's like what I'd encourage customers, I guess, is, please reach out to us. Please, get on calls with us and work with us. And, we'll try and very much work with you, very sympathetic to how budgeting cycles and stuff work, but also help you sort of, I guess, think long-term about what the value of the product is. And yeah, unfortunately, we've got some customers who are upset about the pricing change, and, very understandably so. There's a lot of customers who are also benefiting from it. And in the end, actually, we don't really come out further ahead. This is a pricing change that we've done because for the future, I think, to keep Octopus sustainable, it's important. It doesn't actually help us in the short term. And yeah, that was a long answer.
Yeah, that's fine. We're good with long answers. That's fine. I'm curious to know, is there a breakdown as to how many people are benefiting versus benefiting is probably not, like, but like how, do you know what the breakdown is? Is it roughly 50-50 in terms of people who are getting smaller, paying smaller bills versus higher bills, that sort of thing?
It's a bit tricky. I think there's probably about 20 to 30% of customers where actually they sort of work out roughly the same. They had similar pricing before and after. There's others who, there's, and it's probably equally split, I think, between customers who are having an increase and customers who are experiencing a decrease. But the other impact, I think, is that we're now charging for something we didn't used to charge for. So people used to have a lot of projects just because we didn't charge for them. Now they're thinking about, does this project, do I still need it or not? Do I still need this pipeline or not? Now you can disable them and they won't count towards pricing. I'm not sure if a lot of people understand that. But I believe that's the case anyway. I probably need to check. But
that was my next question. How can people save on their
build? That I think that's one way you can do it, and the same for like targets and so on. But yeah, there are so what a lot of customers are doing is taking a moment to also think through, like, this project, someone created it 3 years ago. It's never been deployed anywhere. It wasn't important. Right. I probably don't need to include this. And so in the end, actually, I think we end up being slightly smaller because of the pricing change overall, in terms of like overall revenue that we're making.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that the customer whose price has gone up doesn't have a very valid complaint and concern that we need to engage with them and work with them on. And very, very, very much hoping and willing to do that as people reach out to us.
Yeah, something that I reference a lot is the roadmap. And the reason why is because I think it demonstrates the value that people are getting. And certainly the cadence of which we're releasing has gotten much, much faster. Like, Jim and I talk about this a lot. We talk about the new features that are available up on cloud. And this is building towards a question I want to ask you. But if you're at all curious, you can check out the roadmap at roadmap.octopus.com. As I always say, try and make it your homepage, if not a bookmark. But if you're at all curious as to like justifying, the price changes, etc., if you're paying more or if you're paying less, you can see the value that you're getting. We happen to update this quite a lot. And so this is actually a good sort of primer into how much we're shipping, how much we're releasing, that sort of thing. Like there's just pages and pages and pages of this stuff. And so I always try and point to this if I can. I did want to ask a little bit about this, Paul, which is, you've talked a little bit about, where we're at and where we're going, et cetera. I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about where we're going. So we've announced the acquisition of CodeFresh. And then obviously after this, people are like, now what? So what does the future hold for us in your mind? Where do you see the future for all this? Like we've talked a little bit about the roadmap here in terms of what's planned and what's under consideration. There's the acquisition. You can see how I'm building towards the question here. But what in your mind are you thinking about when looking at the future of Octopus?
Yeah, we've still got a lot left to build. That's the really cool thing about, I think, the space that we're in, right? Like, I think if you're in the, version control space, for example, like a lot of that space has been fairly thoroughly explored. Octopus is sort of the only company I think really focused on continuous delivery, the deployment side of continuous delivery, really well. So, and the cool thing about CodeFresh, like us, they were also very R&D heavy. So the majority of people who came across as part of CodeFresh, they're all in R&D. They have a lot of experience on Argo and GitOps and so on. I think we're, when it comes to like security contributions to the Argo project, for example, we're number one in those contributions. So we do a lot to support open source there. We're investing in growing the team that's dedicated to working on open source. So I think the fun challenge in front of us is effectively we've got these two products today, Octopus and CodeFresh. CodeFresh has a continuous integration component, and then it has a GitOps component that's built on top of Argo. And no matter how, because what I think tends to happen is customers who are adopting Kubernetes, it starts in sort of one of two ways. One is like the application team is adopting it, and so they just begin with continuous delivery, and we've got a bunch of great functionality for that. If you start from there, or they start from more of an operations point of view, like the operations team spins up the cluster, the operations team is managing the stuff on the cluster, and Argo lends itself really well to that operations team. The goal over the next year or so is going to be to bring the GitOps functionality in CodeFresh and bring that into Octopus. So when you're in Octopus, I haven't figured out exactly how it's going to work, but being able to say, this is a GitOps project, or this is a continuous delivery project, or maybe it's one type of project, but within it, you can have things that deploy to Argo, and we treat Argo as a target or something that we're deploying to. There's a lot to figure out there, and the teams have their own roadmaps and stuff that they're working on today, but we're starting to bring that process together. And then on the CI part of it, CodeFresh has a very successful CI platform, and for the longest time, I think Octopus has focused on assuming CI is a solved problem and just focusing on CD. But as we talk to more of our larger customers and as they spin up platform teams, I think the thing they struggle with is they have Jenkins, they have GitHub Actions, they have other tools they're using for CI, but doing CI at scale, doing CI/CD, the whole continuous delivery pipeline at scale is a really hard thing, because what you end up with is 70,000 Jenkins pipelines, a whole bunch of stuff using Argo or whatever else in between, a lot of custom scripting to kind of bring all that together. And so if you go back to our roadmap, actually, there's a part on there about blueprints that we're working on. So we've got a team that's actively working on this challenge of, I'm a platform engineer, and I don't want 70,000 ways that we deploy applications at my enterprise. I want 7, and I want to be able to maintain those 7 so that if my governance requirements change, I can add some extra steps, and it doesn't just apply to one team, it applies to all of the teams. And if a team needs to make an exception, that's not a thing they do by copying and pasting the process and going their own way. It's a thing that's sort of modeled in a first-class way in the product. So that's I think something that no one's ever really solved really well at scale for teams doing CD at scale. And I think CI is an important part of that too. And so we're thinking a lot about how do we carefully, properly bring CodeFresh CI into Octopus, and sort of broaden Octopus from just focus on the deployment part to sort of bring build in as part of that too, but in a way that really works with these blueprints so that we can scale continuous delivery to hundreds of teams, thousands of teams.
Anyways, with that, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Paul, thank you very much for joining us on this special edition, I guess, of Deploy on Friday. Yeah, hopefully we'll drag you on to other ones. It would be nice to hear from you again sometime in the near future.
Sounds good. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
All right. Everyone, happy deployments. Take care.